I'm starting us off. We're very tightly scripted, as you can tell. I'm Lisa Stevens. I'm the Senior Strategist for Academic Innovation at SUNY.
And I'm Lori Fox. I'm the Assistant Director for Educational Technology at SUNY Geneseo.
And we're really excited to be presenting today, not only to you, but to those of you hopefully in a comfortable seat at home or in your office. And what we want to talk about today is Master Learning Space Design Planning. This is us. You already know that. And we actually have objectives.
Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do in this session is we're going to look at EDUCAUSE's Learning Space Rating System, which we frequently just use the acronym LSRS, and FLEXspace. These are two robust planning tools that we're going to talk about today.
We're going to align the learning spaces with campus strategy. Hopefully you'll find alignment with the tools that we offer today with your campus strategy.
And we're also going to align with faculty pedagogy and space.
And with any luck at all, we're going to have a live demonstration that's going to function just fine.
We're also going to talk about how we use these tools at Geneseo. We've been working with Lisa's guidance over a little over 6 months maybe on studying our spaces at Geneseo. So I'm going to show you some of the results that we have found during our case study.
And truth be told, we're also going to be presenting something very similar to this at the SCUP conference in Vancouver in a few weeks. So if you have any suggestions or if there's anything you would have liked to have seen in this presentation, by all means, please be brutal and let us know.
Not too brutal.
Well, a little brutal. Okay. The quick tool overview, just so everybody, we can level set on what these tools are. FLEXspace is it's a global repository of learning environments. We're talking about physical spaces here, although we've left the door open that we can at some point in time include some type of example of virtual environments as well. One of the things that we're really, really pleased to share with you today is we were just named one of the Campus Technology 2016 Innovation Awardees. So you'll see some press on that, I think. And you know, I tell everyone I'm really embarrassed because that release came out with my name on it, and this is just a very large scale collaboration with multiple professional organizations, multiple institutions, but I filled out the form. And, this should be a real point of pride for all of SUNY. This was invented out of the very first cohort of the Faculty Advisory Council on Teaching and Technology task groups. So we put together a learning environments task group. Brad Snyder was one of the co-founders. He's with us today along with Joe Moreau, who's since moved on to Foothill De Anza Community College District as the vice chancellor there, former CIO of Oswego, but he remains very active in this. But here's the fun fact I like to share. As of about a week ago, we've grown from a few test records, remember our test records, Brad, to over 1,700 individual user accounts representing over 700 institutions, and more excitingly, even across 32 different countries. I'm CC'd on all of the account requests that come in through ArtStore, and it's always a happy day when my machine starts pinging and I see more account requests come in. The Learning Space Rating System was developed around the same time as FLEXspace, also a very equally dedicated team to put together a system of quantitative benchmarking. It's founded off of the LEED environmental credit system. Most of you are familiar with LEED Silver or LEED Gold, measuring the environmental efficiency potential of a building. And they included very strongly in their quantitative score sheets a method to encourage master planning. So we think now the combination of these two efforts and these two tools are really going to be a nice, strong, oh, there it is. I forgot you put that in there. That's so cool. A very useful set of planning tools. So, as I was saying, this is what we look to demonstrate through the case study at Geneseo. This is also something that's been tried out at Buff State in small bites, as well as Iowa State University, where they've been using the combination of the tools to align the stakeholders, make sure everybody's on the same page, often before they even sit down with any type of external contractor or any donors or anyone that they need to work with. Let's all kind of agree in advance by looking at examples in FLEXspace, as well as prioritizing what our needs may be on campus through the learning space rating system. And also it's a really nice way just to showcase your spaces, you know, in such a growing global environment.
Okay, here's an opportunity for some audience participation. So I hope you're all limbered up. How many of you have heard of EDUCAUSE's learning space rating system? Good. Okay, just about everyone. Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay.
How many of you have heard of FLEXspace? Okay, about the same amount of people. Okay, who has used them? Okay, that's not fair, but okay, so Lisa and I are going to work with you today and show you how advantageous it is to use these tools. And we gave you, when you came in, an example of the rating system. We're going to step through those together. So the first thing we're going to look at is the learning space rating system. To me, the most important part of this is that it's a framework for measuring how successful your spaces are. Lisa mentioned it's modeled after the LEAD program. It's measurable criteria in 6 sections that we're going to step through actually together. We're going to look at our sheets together. So this is the handout you want to work from, and we can go ahead and start to look at those. So there are 6 sections. And the first one we're going to look at is integration with campus context. And at Geneseo, here's where we worked with our provost office to make sure that what we're doing in our physical spaces aligns with the strategic plans on campus. There are possible of 5 credits for this. And the nice thing about the rating system is once you have this section complete, it's the same for every classroom. So this is really fantastic. So section 1 is all about how does it align with your strategic plan. Section 2 is the planning process. How many of you, when you're remodeling a space, be sure to engage all aspects of the community, including faculty, facilities, is your IT staff brought in? That's about what our campus looked like. You'll see when we look at the scores for the 3 classrooms that I brought with me today that the planning process is where we have the most room actually for improvement. And this is to ensure we have stakeholder engagement, we can do pilot projects, and we also need to get feedback from our faculty. How does the space work for them? Is it doing what they expect it to do? And this is all based on evidence. Section 3 is related to support and operations. Here's another section that once you have this done for your campus, it's pretty much the same for all of your classrooms. This was a great opportunity for us in the IT department to take a look at our own operations. Are we training the faculty in how to use the spaces? Do we have documents available to faculty so that they can learn on their own without needing to come to a class? We also looked at the diverse patterns of use. Is the classroom used a good amount of the time? And we also looked at how is our space scheduled? That's support and operations. Next is environmental quality. This is a pretty neat section that talks about what does the environment of the room look like. And we're working from page 2 of the learning space rating system. So let's take a look at this classroom. Daylight, access to daylight. We're not getting a point here. You know, there's not too many things you can do about a classroom with respect to what some of the environmental factors are. But as we started to look at the learning space rating system on campus, it really made us feel good about how many of our classrooms have such a great room for improvement based on how the building was built and how things look. So views to exterior. We've got pretty good views to the exterior here. The idea is that you want people outside the classroom to be able to see what's happening here. I'm a little short. These windows might not be great for me, and there certainly are other rooms that are probably better, but this room is pretty good there. Interior visibility, we're doing okay in this room. Lighting control. If you see the light switches, it looks like it's behind the door. Okay, so lighting control is okay. Thermal comfort, we seem pretty good in this building. One of the things that we found at Geneseo is our buildings generally fell into two categories. We have pretty close to half of our buildings have climate control year-round, and the others we rely on opening the windows, so those might not be as comfortable. And then the other pieces of environmental quality are user perceptions of the stimulation of the room. Is the room attractive? How does it look? Is it innovative? What are the acoustics like? So this is where, for the learning space rating system, you're actually stepping into the classroom and seeing what's the environment like here. And next is layout and furnishings. This is the longest section of the rating system. This is all of page 3, actually, where you're really looking at furniture and how is the furniture laid out. Is it movable? These are great. I love these types of chairs. We have them in one of the rooms that I'll be showcasing shortly. What's the seating density of the room? This is a nice big room. One of the things that's in the learning space rating system is, do you have the right amount of square feet for what type of room you're trying to work with? Also, things to consider are there writable surfaces? In our old school, I call it our old school classroom, our writable surfaces are from an old kindergarten classroom, so the chalkboards actually end about here. They go down to my knees. So, again, an area for improvement in some of our things, and then innovation and future proofing. That's layout and furnishings. Next is technology and tools. Very interesting to me, our students on campus, what's their #1 need when they come into a classroom? Actually, you guys are doing good for late in the day. Usually, we'd find students lined up by those electrical outlets over there, right? So sufficient electrical power for what you're trying to do in a room is very important, as is network connectivity, any of our displays, lecture capture. So what we're looking at in this section is how well does the technology support what you're trying to do in the classroom. So those are the 6 sections of the LSRS. And again, we can divide them into really 2 things. The institutional readiness, how is your college set up to design classrooms, to ensure that the classrooms are behaving the way faculty want them to, and then all of our physical space, including furnishings. Any questions on the learning space rating system while we take a look at FLEXspace? We're going to explore the scores a little deeper when I show you how we applied them at Geneseo.
Thanks, Lori. So FLEXspace.org has a very rich history. It's rooted in SUNY, as I mentioned, and it all started when David Lavallee, our former provost, walked into one of his advisory group meetings and said, we're a 64 campus system. For pity's sake, isn't there a way that we can share information on building and renovating spaces more effectively? And even though this was only back in like 2010, 2011 when the initial question was asked, we really weren't using a lot of those cloud-based applications at the time. So we knocked around the idea, could we use Flickr? Could we use Facebook? I mean, how can we share across the system but not have commercials pushed at us or this type of thing? And we had the serendipity that Joe Moreau happened to walk into a conference and ran into a gal named Megan Marler, who's the senior strategist at ArtStore. And those of you with library backgrounds are familiar with ArtStore and know that they have a very robust repository, very high quality images available to libraries and campus-based license users of that content. And they were in the process of exploring a new product called Shared Shelf. And what Shared Shelf does is it enables individuals to build their own collections and share them. So it's taking advantage of the robust architecture of their back end, but allows the flexibility to build all different types of collections. So after we did some note comparisons, we thought, hey, that's a pretty good fit. So we ran a pilot. That pilot was then taken off to a CCUMC conference in Las Vegas, where we were just presenting what we had discovered within SUNY, and a number of hands went up in the air and said, we'd really like to be a part of that. And at that point we figured, wow, we've really got something going on here. So we worked together as a small core group of people, actually developed a business plan, which to this day still amazes me, where we looked out 5 years and said, where do we want to be? How do we get there? Who do we need to help us get there? And it started with the vision and the mission statement. From day one, we said we want this to be open, meaning anybody can request an account. It's not just openly available on the web. You have to get an account from ArtStore to get into the repository. But the content has to be developed enough and robust enough that you can search on a variety of terms from a variety of perspectives. And at some point, we want to introduce the element of peer review. And by peer review, that could be something very informal. It could be the number of stars. Do you like this space? And that may drive certain spaces to the top. Where it's going to take a little while to still iron out that particular aspect of it. But that's always been the vision for it. And then the mission itself was to go out and build it. And as our friend Jerry Hanley likes to say at the Cal State system, and is the godfather of Merlot, so he knows a thing or two about building repositories, and we were very fortunate to have Jerry's help right from the early days. He said, give a gift, not a burden. You know, make sure that you're developing something that people are going to use, and make sure it saves time, money, and effort, or at the end of the day, it's really not going to be useful to people. So then we went about the business of seeing who might be interested in helping us. And I mentioned earlier, it's a very large-scale collaboration, and we are so proud to always include the support that we're getting from our sponsors, Herman Miller, who came to the table very early on and said, we'll support this effort, we see the value in it. And recently, Crestron's joined us because they see the value in how they can highlight and showcase some of their spaces and encourage the campuses they work with to upload their spaces as well. But we were thrilled when ELI said, yep, we're on board. We'll develop this right alongside the Learning Space rating system. And they feature us in many of their conferences and whatnot. And you can see the other organizations as well. And I mentioned we're headed off to the SCUP conference in just a couple of weeks. So the idea on how this cycle can work. When we started out, we actually had the FLEXspace LSRS relationship color-coded a little bit differently to fit in to what's considered the cycle of planning and design in this. Because we thought, well, if people could use LSRS in the pre-design and schematic design phase, then they could eventually go in and just look at examples or what your peers are doing from other campuses, so you don't have to fly out there, you don't have to ask for webcam shots, something like that. You can literally go into a record and find out a lot of information. What we found, the more we got into it, is it's just a continuous cycle. Sometimes ideas come from browsing through FLEXspace, and then you might engage in the LSRS to quantify different spaces on campus and also look at what scores might be applied within the repository. So the point is within the design cycle itself, it's just kind of a continuous improvement cycle. All right, here's the exciting part. I mentioned earlier how the whole system has seen growth, and I love looking at the different countries as they're represented. And it's not just one person at each country. I mean, there's multiple people from a number. Well, some countries have just one, but by and large, there's 3, 4, 5 people from a campus or a campus system that have come in and started looking at the examples that are in there. And the statistics are fairly granular. We can look at, you know, when you ask for an account, we ask you to identify the type of institution you're from, the sector you're from, so we have an idea of how that record's fitting your particular campus. And we know that it boils down to pretty much 2 different uses. There's the opportunity to showcase what's going on in your campus, and you can go through, you can showcase campus highlights, but you can go in and look at various records, by searching either by a field or a keyword, or you can then build your own collection inside Shared Shelf and download it as a PowerPoint, or you can download it as a Word doc, which is pretty cool. If you go in and select a bunch of records, you can click a button, it'll spill into that PowerPoint, and all of the attributes of the record show up where the notes come in. So when you go to meet with your leaders internally, you've got your collection already put together to discuss and narrow down. We also have on the public website side the spaces and the spotlight, so you don't even need to request an account and go in and use FLEXspace. You can go to the FLEXspace.org, click on the spaces in the spotlight, I'll show you in a minute, and you can look at campus collections and you can look at sponsored content collections. We were so naive, side story, when we started out. We just thought that people were going to want to, sponsors were going to want to give us money just with the eyes on the records. And the first time someone said, well, can't we upload content? It was like, well, we don't know if we want you to upload content because we're neutral turf, and we don't want to give the impression that there's any one particular company or any one particular organization exercising a lot of influence here. And then it occurred to us, oh, we went back, we talked with the folks at ArtStore, and we figured out how we can tag content as part of the FLEXspace community collection, or we can tag it as part of the sponsored collection, and that will be obvious when you actually look at records that pop up based on your key terms. But when you go to search, it searches the entire collection. So if one of the sponsors upload content, their content is very visible and available as well. You can also, you have to upload your content. This is just a single screenshot of one particular upload feed. This is where Brad earned all of his money. He worked for, oh, you got it. He worked long and hard with a number of people in the AV integration team. We developed all this with this naive notion that we wanted to promote world peace. So another aside. So you know what it's like when you build or renovate a space. You get in there and the faculty have the idea of what their needs are. The facilities and planning people know what some of the realities are behind their world, and then you've got the AV integration team that invariably gets upset because we can't core the floor or run a big enough conduit in the ceiling, that type of thing. So we thought if we could separate those three worlds and ask people for the most important information from their perspective, and then follow the Jerry Hanley rule of give a gift and not a burden, how do you ask for enough content in each one of those worlds to make the repository very meaningful, but not so much that it takes way too much time, to upload a record? And there are some master copy record features in here, so once you fill out one, you can actually copy a lot of that content if you're uploading multiple spaces. But that's the idea. We have three separate taxonomies. And this is the part where we're going to jump into a live demo. This is not rehearsed. Can you hold this mic for me for just a second? Thank you. So all you do is well, you know what? First I'm going to show you the website itself. So there are here some videos, some tutorials that explain how to upload content, how to download content. I mentioned earlier the spaces in the spotlight. So right up on top, we've got the San Diego Learning Glass Studio. So you can go through and look at that. And then scroll down and see there's all sorts of different examples. The sponsor content is divided up by the sponsor level and how they have their collection managed in here. Then we have the links to the Learning Space rating system, and then the different resources and About Us, where you can look at the user stats and contact members of the core team. So you can always get back to the start by going home or clicking on the logo. Okay. Now, thank you. I mentioned depending on your sponsorship level, you can get into a named collection or share a collection, but I'm going to go into the FLEXspace community collection. And you can see right away there's tiled views, and all of these tiles, oh, we're missing one from Brockport. We'll have to talk with them about that. Hey, MJ, what up with that? So, what's highlighted here is we've asked ArtStore to display the campus name and then the type of classroom it is based on the learning and assessment taxonomy and the year it was built or last revised. So I can go through and just look at different tiles, thinking, that looks interesting. There's nice resolution. You can zoom in. If you put in a high resolution image, you can get very close to seeing what exactly were they using back in there. I can go through and click on a number of images. I can, you can see that there's 424 records currently uploaded in the system, and we're looking at 48 per page. So I'm going to say my campus is interested right now in investigating active learning classrooms. Okay, so we've narrowed the search to 188 records. And then maybe I want to, use different search terms and make it more granular from there. Oh, let me pop over here and show you something. I think it's really cool that you can actually upload video into these records. So talk about a dangerous live demo. This is the University of Minnesota's active learning space, the Brunix building, which is amazing. And this is a very nice video because it features faculty actually talking about how they shifted over to teaching in active learning environments. I didn't bother to plug in the sound, so I'm going to exit out of this. Okay. So that's pretty much the download side. Oh, and I mentioned you can build a collection and hold meetings from that. I should mention that one of the really wonderful things about having a couple of sponsors now is that we've been able to contract with Rebecca Frazee from San Diego State, who teaches all about learning spaces, and she's helping us to curate the collection, and frankly, she's much better at driving these demos than I am. Let's see. Add your images. So I'm just going to open up a real quick one at the top here. I'm not going to alter anything in this record because it's not mine, but you can see that as you march through the different taxonomies, right now I'm on facilities. It asks for the contact names. You can put in your learning space rating system score, and essentially it asks for information that people in facilities are very concerned with. And there's some pull-down menu items. Let's see. You can choose from the menu the type of lighting, things of that nature. Okay. And then the technology integration, same thing. What type of AV control interface. And this is purposely generic because our hope is that as we gain more sponsors, we'll get feedback from an advisory council of sponsors, and they'll guide the type of content that we should be collecting and altering. And finally, there's the learning and assessment piece. And you can see the types of spaces that are listed here. It gets very granular. And you upload an image, and then you hit save, and it uploads the record. So I'm just going to bail out of the demo, I think, at this point. Any questions about navigate? Yeah, Brad?
I was just going to say, I mean, you showed the search feature, but I don't think we should minimize that because it's huge. I mean, it's basically a virtual tour of all the campuses. I'm sorry. The search feature is very important because it's basically a virtual tour of all the campuses across everything that's been entered in there, where you can target a particular space type. So like I've had librarians come, we recently were asked to build a collaboration space, and the librarians came to me and says, oh, we went to this FLEXspace spot and printed out all these different features. So it was really, really nice to see. But it's amazing. I mean, it's just like going to this conference. One of the things I always pick up is the furniture. I love these furnitures. You know, rollabout desks with and the things you don't like this cabling over here, which looks like it's going to attack these ladies any moment now. But anyway, so the search feature is very, very, very important.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, one of our members of the core team often says, you know, I don't buy from a sales rep. I really buy from colleagues, because I'll pick up the phone and ask, you know, what a colleague's experience was with a particular product. So the contact information to these records are all embedded. So you can pick up the phone. It is very much a community-driven enterprise. Sure. What you do is you go to FLEXspace.org, and there's a button you can click there that says request an account, and then you're led through some fields, and you usually get it within a day or two. Then you have access to the entire collection. Yep. And in the meantime, you can go through the tutorial videos and learn how to upload and download records and work with the different features. Sure.
So you want to push play from current.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk. I mean, Brad gave us a good start. How do you see these tools can help you on your campus or in your job? Does anyone have any ideas right now? Got any projects coming up that you might use these for?
Well, you're interested in getting an account, so you.
Well, yeah, we have a new building that's being built.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
So people at home can hear. There we go. That's my best Oprah.
I guess we have a building that's being renovated, and about 3 years ago we looked at new furniture, but now we're looking at spaces that might be innovative. So when I saw some of those pictures, I thought we looked at that kind of thing, stuff like, 5 years ago. So those pictures seem even more innovative than what we've been looking at. So yes.
So I had an interesting question earlier today because you gave an update on FLEXspace in the Open SUNY session, and someone said, well, this is about campus spaces. How does this fit into Open SUNY? So I wanted to ask if you could talk about the relevance of all of this for distance learning spaces.
That is a real, thank you. That's almost like a
That's a
plant
nice
question, and I promise it wasn't, because I've had to answer that question before. Because when you look at the efficiencies of capturing content to work with it in an online environment, where's the camera? How are we going to hear the students? How are we going to hear the instructor? And so much of the content, I know at my home campus, one of the approaches we took was to capture classes and use that just as a guide for the instructional designers to look at that content, and then we'd occasionally pull a clip of a faculty member explaining something in particular. So when you start to think about that in terms of developmental education, tutorial applications, or just capturing content in general, and now that I'm working with Coursera, I'm starting to see huge value in that, because we have so many rooms that are capable of effectively capturing content without having to necessarily engage field production units and things of that nature. Oh, absolutely, ma'am.
It also seems to me, as we see so many other tools becoming available now for engagement. Web conferencing tools are out there, and classrooms are being connected with tools like Zoom and other applications. It seems to me that that the term classroom goes beyond what we typically think of as the kind of classroom that we're in now, but to maybe even small conference rooms or meeting rooms where those technologies exist. And there are implications for things like sound and lighting, and how to have those spaces be designed so that they can be effective for all different types of learning applications. So I really see there's a lot of opportunity in this for online learning, for distance learning. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's not really about face-to-face classes.
And we've got interest from museums They want to upload space. The longer term vision is to make this available to all types of nonprofit organizations and different learning organizations that want to improve their spaces and look through the records. Brad has another thought.
I also really like the idea. I mean, a lot of campuses have classroom committees, or maybe they're named a little differently, but I love the idea that the learning space rating system kind of pulls together everybody and asks the right questions and helps the campus, the various constituents on the campuses to address all these questions that typically they don't ask, or so instead of each department working in a void, it kind of brings everybody at the table, gets a conversation started, and in the end you have a better product.
One friend of ours said, it really took the politics right out of it. How are you going to argue with the benchmarking? When you look against, when somebody's lobbying to have this space upgraded versus that space. And of course, you've always got to be flexible to different needs, but it helped to the prioritizing of the space project. Other thoughts? Time for you to talk.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm ready. Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about how things have been going at Geneseo over the last 6 months. When Lisa first approached us to do this project, we thought this was a great opportunity to quantitatively measure our learning spaces, something that we've never done before. It also gives us a good chance to align what we're doing with our strategic goals. You may know Geneseo has a new president. We have a strategic planning group led by our provost, and we're looking at strategically changing things on campus. And now our learning spaces, we're able to align what we're doing in our learning spaces with our goals. So you can go ahead. Okay, so let's talk about what we've been doing. So the first thing is who. This is really a collaboration between the Office of the Provost and CIT, my department. We contacted our faculty last fall and asked them to nominate some spaces where they felt that we could make some improvements that would really help them in their teaching. It gave us an opportunity together with the Provost's office to define that campus context section and to look at our support and make sure that the support our IT department is offering supports the learning spaces, especially the innovative ones. We also took a chance to review our recent renovations. Those of you that were on our campus last year for CIT may remember that Bailey building. We're going to talk a little bit about one of those classrooms right now. That's our most recent project, and that was a very big project with a lot of fantastic new spaces that we renovated before we knew about the learning space rating system. So to go back after and say, wish I had this measurement, wish we knew what our goals could have been, but it puts us in a good spot going forward. So why? Why did we agree to participate in this and move forward? We are really working to transition our spaces to support active, engaged learning, to be more flexible. And it's more than just new chairs in a classroom. It actually helps us bring a spirit of collaboration to our remodeling. We work with our facilities department, the academic departments, the IT department. We have a slide coming up that shows all the different areas we're going to bring together when we start to look at spaces to renovate. It also gives us more of a strategic approach to planning and design. It gives us some meaningful comparisons between the rooms. When you look at the 3 rooms I selected, one number, a 59. Well, what does a 59 mean? We're going to talk a little bit about comparing our spaces to see where can we have the most impact in a space. It also gives us a national benchmark to compare what we're doing to what's going on at other campuses. So this is our learning space journey. The first piece was getting the right people together. We've been learning and using the learning space rating system. We're having a lot of fun looking at FLEXspace, at what our colleagues at other colleges are doing. And our goal all along is to align it to our strategic plans. So we're ready for innovation. Lisa and I talk a lot about being shovel ready. So when we have capital projects coming up or future innovations that we want to do, we are prepared with a a body of information about our learning spaces to say, hey, these are the learning spaces that we really want to make a difference in and that we want to innovate first. So this slide talks about the stakeholders. We've referred to this a couple of times. We have here, it looks a little fuzzy up here, we have faculty, we have our scheduling. So how we schedule our classrooms is a big deal, right? One of the things that we uncovered when we started talking about this is faculty would say, wow, I'd really love a space that has movable furniture or tables and chairs that I can move into groups. And I kind of thought to myself, we have that in about 6 fantastic spaces on campus. So we're starting to gently look at how do we schedule the spaces? Are we pairing up the faculty and their pedagogical needs with the spaces we have available on campus? So scheduling is an important piece of this. We also work with our facilities. We bring in department chairs, our IT department, our media department's part of our IT department. And we're also looking at what professional development do we want to do with the faculty to help them learn how to use innovative spaces. So we're including all of these stakeholders and making them aware of all of the factors so that we can work together to put forth the best proposal for modifying our class spaces. Okay, right sizing and scheduling. It's interesting to look at the history of classrooms on our campuses. I would say the #1 factor that most faculty look at is how many seats are there in a classroom. But there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there? So we want to be sure that when we're scheduling and when we're making modifications to rooms, that we're matching not just how many students are in the class, but is the pedagogy supported by the learning spaces. So we are looking at scheduling and seating density, but we're also starting to really raise the importance of other factors of the rooms as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about 3 rooms on our campus. If you go to the last page of your learning space rating system packet, you'll see that there are 4 types of spaces that we're going to look, that the learning space rating system focuses on. The first one is discussion focused, the second is presentation focused, team-based space, and versatile space. Now, all 3 of the rooms that we're talking about here with the Geneseo examples, I would consider versatile. They don't all work that way. But in the faculty that teach in these rooms, they all want them to be versatile. They want to be able to be set up for a lecture like we are now. They want to be able to move the desks into a circle or into small groups to change the layout of the room. Choosing 3 rooms, this makes me feel like house hunters. It's kind of the favorite part of my job. So I have named our 3 rooms. We have the new building. That would be Bailey. You guys might have seen that last year. We have the room in our School of Education department where they have a strong desire for pedagogical support of what they're trying to do. And they're a department that I've been working closely with the last few months. And then we have the old school room. This is a room that has so much potential for improvement, but it's pretty old school. So let's take a look at the pictures and we'll talk about the ratings. So this is Bailey 101 and 102. This is a pretty big room. One side of the room has about 60 seats and the other side has 30 seats. Our building was opened in 2014. You will recognize the chairs. We are using these chairs. We have great technology in these rooms. We have writable surfaces on the walls. Of course, everything has a projector. Great networking. We have power in the floor, so pretty much wherever the students are, they have access to power. So let's see how this scores. Okay, so our score summary for the new room is a 77. Okay, now 77 out of 100. That number is kind of hard to stomach, right? Because 77, I mean, I have high school children. That's kind of like, okay, you try. Well, but for our campus, this is actually a great room. And Lisa and I are going to show you in FLEXspace some rooms that score in the 90s, so you can kind of see some comparisons. But if you look at our score for Bailey 101 and 102, it's in the planning and design process where we didn't meet the requirements of the different aspects. And I think any room we have going forward at Geneseo, we're going to rock that section because now we're aware of the pieces that we need to do before we do the renovation. So the new room gets a 77.
And I should say that was also the basis of a lot of discussion among the LSRS team, is how much to weight those various factors. And we got a snicker last week because we know LSRS version 2.0 is going to be out soon. So we contacted our friend Malcolm Brown and said, and director of ELI, and said, when do you anticipate, or we can't find it, or it's not on the website? He said, well, it hasn't been posted yet, so that's why you can't find it. But they anticipate that that will be released fairly soon. It's been beta tested.
Okay, so the second room we're going to look at is in South Hall, and this is South Hall 235. This room was installed in roughly 1996. This is a School of Education room. It's used by many graduate classes as well. And one of the things that the School of Education really is hoping for in this room is some new furniture. I think in '96, when this room was installed, the idea of having tables and chairs was actually pretty good for this kind of space. But the tables are heavy. Dave, these are probably the same tables you had when you were a student there. Yeah. Dave is one of my former students. I'm always happy to run into him at these. But they have great things going on in this space that we actually don't have in Bailey, which you'll see on the sheet, things like storage. In this room, and thank you, this is fine, we can stay here. In this room, one of the faculty talked to me about she does not like where a piece of technology is installed. And I said to her, and then this might have been a little foolish of me, I said to her, well, let's move you to a different room. I can't move to a different room, all of my materials are in this room. So it wasn't until I started to look at the classroom as a whole, not just the furniture, that I realized that storage in a space is very important for many disciplines. So this room, which is vintage 20-year-old room, scores a 63. So we've dropped from a 77 to a 63. Again, you see that our planning and design process is a little bit weaker, but also we score pretty low in layout and furnishings and in technology and tools. So now we're dropping. We're getting to the older rooms. Okay, and here's the old school room.
Off to Wells?
We'll go to Wells.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Wells 134. I keep backing up the date that this room was installed. I'm guessing this is from the 70s, but it could even be older. Does anybody still have these old armchairs in your buildings on campus? Yeah. It's like the first house I owned that was over 100 years old, where in the bedroom I had one power outlet by the bed, and that's it. Similar in this room. This is also the room, I didn't put the picture up, that has the kindergarten chalkboards that are very low. This room, however, is beautiful with windows all along one side. It has great visibility to outside the room. It has wonderful spaces in the building for students to gather informally before or after class. It's got a lot of really great things going on in it, but absolutely zero innovation. So let's take a look at this score. Anyone want to guess how much we're dropping now? Did you say that before it came up? Okay. So we dropped to a 59 here. When we started to look at rooms where faculty would like to do some innovation, this room has so much potential, but it also requires a lot of work. We would change the orientation of the room. We would be able to add informal spaces in the room for students to work on group projects together. We've got great potential in this type of space. So just to review, I brought 3 spaces with me. The new space got a 77. The 20-year-old space that I think is in pretty good shape got was that a 63, thank you, Kirk. And our old school room got a 59. So those are the 3 rooms that we've completed. We are in the process of doing all 150 of our spaces. Yeah, it's great. Sure. Okay, that's a great question. So her question was, how long does it take you to evaluate each space? There are 6 sections in this. Okay. It took us a while to get sections 1 and 3 figured out. That's the campus context and support and operations. Once you have that, it's the same for every one. The other pieces, I'm sorry, let me back up one more time. Planning and design would be the same sort of thing. You would know for each of the rooms the pieces that you did. You don't need to be in the classroom to do that. So those 3 pieces, once you've got it figured out, come together pretty quickly for each room. In the last 3 pieces, I am working on, and I hope ELI does the same sort of thing. I'm working on a form that I can use when I'm in a classroom, like on my iPad, to just very quickly say, yes or no, does it have these pieces? It probably takes, once you get going, it takes probably about 45 minutes to do each room. Because we go to the room. At the same time, I'm taking pictures of the room so that we can put them in FLEXspace. There's also a spot in the learning space rating system to store them. But we're looking at all different aspects. So you really need to just go through the checklist and say, you know, does it have storage? Does it have multiple light switches so you can change the level of the lights? What does the technology look like in the room?
And that's one of the aspects that the teams are coordinating with right now is ArtStore is getting ready to move onto a mobile platform, which we've been talking about for a little while. And there's just been some challenges moving, as you can imagine, that entire collection to a mobile platform. Now, if for some reason, even if we can't get there in a reasonable amount of time, we're also talking about putting hooks into WordPress or some way to draw information out, some type of integration between the two. The point being, from a functional standpoint, you can then go into a space, pop a picture on your iPad, and start to fill out that criteria all in one spot. And the 2 systems will hopefully, yeah.
Right. Definitely let's get together then and talk about, because I'm right now working to try to streamline that process. And there are things too, in the learning space rating system, some of the criteria we had to decide, the team had to decide, what are we going to give ourselves credit for? Because it's kind of an all or nothing. You either get a 1 or a 0.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to ask, if you could give a partial point.
No.
Yeah,
No, I don't know. I don't know.
that might be in partial credit might be in version 2.0 because there was a lot of feedback around that.
Access to the outside, I mean, is this a 1 or is it a 0? I think it's a half, I guess.
Right.
And it's just math.
It is. It's just math. And quite honestly, when I first started rating the spaces, I struggled with that because I would actually, depending on how it looks with the rest of the campus, I think you need to figure out what works for your campus. Most of our doors are solid. So I would actually give this a 1. The fact that you can see into the room. But we also,
Then you should rename the point window and a door.
right? I think that's something, that's probably what they're
That's
looking
good
at
feedback,
with
yeah.
phase 2.
We'll get back to you on that, Brad.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's,
The drum roll.
oh, okay, all right. So we were looking at these scores, and I was thinking, 77. That's one of my favorite rooms. Okay, what does a higher scoring room look like? So we searched for the highest rated room in FLEXspace. This room is considered a,
91?
I can't remember if it's discussion or team-based. Do you recall? One
I
of
don't
those.
recall.
I don't recall. But this has the highest score. It's from our friend Adam Finkelstein at McGill University up in Canada. And it has a score of 91. You can tell it's a recent renovation. They've got a lot of cool technology going on in here. They've got some computers and microphones. So I imagine they got points for being able to collaborate from within the room to people outside the room. So this is what a 91 looks like.
Natural light, lots of screens, good sight lines.
Yep.
Do you know where they lost points?
I'm sorry?
No.
I just asked if you knew where they lost points on that.
No, I don't know where they lost points on this, but I know the person who uploaded the space, and I can look back to you on that. He's actually, Adam did a presentation with this room at ELI, so he might have talked about that in one of his presentations. We can look through their records and see if we can find that.
It is very interesting to see how other colleges use the learning space rating system. I worked with Melaine Kenyon from Buffalo, and she gave me an example, and there's a notes section for each one, and that takes a little bit of time to add the notes for everything, but there were some things that she gave herself credit for, and I was like, never thought of giving myself credit for using Collaborate to work with another university. All of our faculty have access to Collaborate. So again, you need to decide for your campus what gives you, where you're going to give yourselves the point. Yes.
Oh, wait, we'll get you a microphone.
A mindfulness space where people would go to, meditate, because that's big now in K-12 schools. And I'm looking at this rating system, which is perfect because I have a meeting on Monday that I'm going to bring it to.
Good.
But what are your thoughts on how you might use something like this for a very different space that isn't typically, at a university? So that's my first question. And my second question is, often graduate spaces are very different. And so you could use a conference room, but it would be great to have a rating system like this for small seminars, and somehow I think this might not work, but maybe it does. So it's really comments and questions.
Well, remember, there are the 6 sections of the learning space rating system. And the layout and furnishing section might not fit the meditative space that you're talking about, but the other 5 sections absolutely do. You want to engage your stakeholders. You want to make sure that all of your environmental controls are there. Are you going to have technology in the room? Maybe you have something where they can play music. Can they connect their own music? There are aspects of this that can be used in, I think, more than a traditional classroom, and even for the seminar rooms.
And from the project perspective, and Brad could speak to this probably better than I, but we spent about 18 months working with colleagues literally spread all over the country on defining those taxonomies. And at one point, both the LSRS team and the FLEXspace team had to say, we can't let perfection become the enemy of the good. We need to roll this out, and then what we'll do is we'll figure out how to do a major revision down the road to include thoughts like that, and perhaps the partial point system, Brad. And we'll work to get these 2 systems more closely aligned. So I think you'll start to see more of the LSRS terms embedded into FLEXspace, perhaps vice versa. We'll see how that pans out.
I think absolutely take the learning space rating system to your meeting. I'd be interested to hear how that goes. Because it's nice, too, to say, hey, there is this national standard put out by EDUCAUSE for spaces. Let's start to follow this plan.
And I think possibly we shouldn't get hung up on not getting 100 out of 100. I mean, every classroom's a compromise. And I mean, I'm just looking through some of these, the furniture, there's a movable partition point. And if you don't get that, you don't get 100. Well,
Right.
99% of the classrooms don't want a movable partition. So maybe we shouldn't get hung up on the score too much.
And if I'm remembering the LSRS, when they started out, it was for informal spaces. So the partitions I think they were talking about were often the movable boards that you could mark things up. Did you want to speak to this slide, or?
Oh, no. Well, this is just kind of a summary of how we're using FLEXspace at Geneseo. It's an idea generator and a conversation starter, and it also gives us an opportunity to show off our best spaces. So that's how we're going to use FLEXspace going forward. So here we are, we're shovel ready. We're ready to go for innovation. And these are somewhat rhetorical questions. How do you prioritize your classrooms and maximize their effect? You're going to look at furniture, but also environmental quality of the rooms. So one of the things that we're doing at Geneseo is we're using the learning space rating system to see what's our priority, where are the rooms that we can have the most impact, and also how can you justify renovation and ask for money.
So we're at the end of the formal part of the presentation. We'd be happy to chat some more. We did want to thank our collaborators. We borrowed some slides from the ELI presentation, and we want to thank our colleagues for the part they played in this. More discussion? Questions?
We use this to redefine all of our spaces. Sorry.
Oh, here, I
Oh, got it?
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to sit on the classroom redesign committee,
Mhm.
and I took this information that I got from FLEXspace to the committee, and we now rename all of our classroom spaces, all the renovations, based on the recommendations that came from this and what I learned at FLEXspace.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, so we're going through a major change in first thinking of how we think about our spaces and then how we redesign and rebuild them. So.
And I don't know, this is inside baseball for everyone in the room, but we're on the same campus, and I'm curious, did you receive all of the data when we went in and did a similar survey of literally all the classrooms on campus?
I did not. That
Oh,
was
good.
before
I've
my
got
time.
that for you. I can. So
Oh,
that might
boy.
save you a little bit of time, because that was pre-LSRS, and we were literally looking at, the power location, whether the data ports functioned, very basic stuff. Might save you a little time.
This summer, we're evaluating and surveying 140 some spaces.
Yeah, it helps to, to bridge the gap. We've also created like a Survey Monkey form and put in the questions so we could, dispatch people that could just fill out the form and
Yeah,
gather
that's what I'm
the
doing
data.
too. Yep.
So,
So, Lori, have you talked about making like a cheat sheet for each of those sections, maybe bulleting different items that make up that point? And is that
Yes.
something you'd be willing to share?
Yes, I would be willing to share it. I don't have any cards with me, but you can find me. I would be willing to share it. What we're doing is actually just a simple Google form that we can do where we have decided for some of these, like lighting controls is a great example. I really want to know, are there multiple banks of lights that you can change? That's a yes or no. I can't ask, I'm using students to help with this. I can't ask a student to say, is the lighting zoned? I want to really break it down simple so that I only have to train a student for a couple minutes to go discover what's going on in the classrooms.
and then the challenge will be to go in and revise the taxonomies in FLEXspace, particularly since there's already data in there. So we'll need to do a very well thought out migration to upgrading that data so everybody, either it's spilled over for people from one field to another migrated, or we just add in the additional fields and then do a communication push that people need to revisit their records. Let me ask a question to you. What would incentivize you to upload records in FLEXspace? Because my sense is a lot of people want to go in and look at spaces, but people are far more reluctant to contribute their spaces. And I know what Brad's answer is, because he hammers on me all the time about, making sure that when you've got a nice space that there is good feedback, to your campus, and that you're shining the light on your campus. And that's a nice thing to do, but
I would go with competition.
competition?
Send in your worst classroom, and then as part of winning that, you have to post the results of the renovation. So post your worst, and then basically go through and post the renovation thereafter as part of the getting the money kind of thing.
I think that the people in this room are pretty comfortable with that approach. I'm not so sure our leadership is.
Well, but if it's always a competition for getting a grant, like a Steelcase grant or a Herman Miller grant, and that they can say, for an extra we'll upload the data. That could be something to.
There's a conversation to have with some of our sponsors.
I will tell you, I applied for the Steelcase grant. Have you heard of the Steelcase grant? Yeah, I did apply for the Steelcase grant, and I used the South Hall room, the School of Education room. I thought we had a good chance, but there were over 800 people that applied, and they give out 12. So, but it really helped when I was applying for the grant that I had already done the score sheet, so I was able to say, I'm using the EDUCAUSE Learning Space rating system. Here's where I see we could do improvements. Here's how I would spend the money. So that was it made applying for the grant really a piece of cake. Yes?
The Steelcase grant seemed to be very focused on Steelcase furniture, frankly.
Oh, well,
surprise, surprise.
it was all for them to give you Steelcase furniture. Yes.
And so if you're looking to do more things than that, which is environmental and lighting and acoustics and so on,
Sure.
it may not be the only right avenue. You certainly will have to add other things to
Right.
it.
Well, actually, part of the grant was we had to agree to do modifications to the room to bring the rest of the room up.
Yes.
But I had all that information too.
Yeah, which is great and wonderful. But you're saying what was the barriers? And Lisa hit on it right off the bat. The leadership, at least on an awful lot of campuses, it's not on their radar at all. Or when it is on their radar, they're almost reluctant because it's a security issue. We don't want other people to know. I've gotten the weirdest, oddest things. Our facilities folks are not. It's just not something that they see value in quite the same way that I would, or that originally when this first came about, and I thought there was some studies, and certainly Steelcase and those kind of folks will tout that the furniture and the upgrades do help with learning. Are those connections in here at all? I thought there were some fields early on that were
There
said you
are.
could feel.
For learning and assessment?
Yeah. It's always been a stretch, but can you be that deterministic or not?
It is a stretch, and actually Malcolm and I talked about that at length one time about, can you infer better learning outcomes as a result of X physical environment. We don't think we're there yet. We think that as the body of evidence grows, we'll be able to start to look at that with some of our faculty. But I don't think anybody's crazy enough at this point to say that if you have that furniture in this configuration, your learning outcomes are going to go up by an average of 15% over, Yeah.
Except if you listen to the Steelcase, if you listen to the Steelcase people, we have chairs that allow the students to fidget now, so that's going to be helpful to them because they need to be able to fidget, and so therefore they'll be more engaged, or they make those kind of inferential kind of things. Yeah. Or you removed all the sight lines, so obviously they're going to learn more.
And I'm also not suggesting, we do have good research on active learning and student engagement. Is that effective? Yes, but can you do active learning in a room with a couple of boards and furniture gathered around with a good faculty member can bring any classroom to life? I think that's the key right off the bat. So then what does the role of technology play in just increasing the efficiency of that exchange and delivery? So we do have good research on pedagogical styles, but then to then take that one more step to the furniture, doing anything else other than enabling some of that, that's a tough one.
It would be really interesting to see if there was any correlation between the LRS scores and the scores that are taught in those classes, historically over a few years.
Oh, Kirk has something to say.
Oh, here, sorry.
It's an inside house thing. In part of ours, we're going to be extracting the data out of our banner system. And I just thought of, in theory, we do have A/B situations where classes were held before Bailey
That's
and
true.
post Bailey, and we would be able to do a score change, a score check of how did those students do, Now, granted, you have other biases and things like that, but you'd be able to say, in Anthro 100, when it was held in the basement of a dark dungeon, now that you have natural sunlight, is there a change?
Right. That's
So we may have to
interesting.
look at that.
Can you look at it before we get to SCUP?
Well, if you ask
You have
somebody to
3
get
weeks.
something
Oh, yeah. Is there any other questions that we can, whoops. Ronnie?
I mean, clearly environmental psychology is still in its infancy. I mean, one thing that strikes me is the importance of lighting. And it strikes me that a lot of the research on the physiology of the physiological, psychological reactions to be sitting in a room like this with this lighting for 3 hours. I don't know if there's been much research done on that. It's not really my area. It was just more an observation.
We're building out a specialty classroom, and I was lucky enough to have brought in a acoustic and lighting designer who advises us on our lighting. And actually, there has been really great research done. It was done quite a while ago, 20 or 30 years ago. It's industry standard, but it's for some reason no one is taking it from the industry of architecture into the classroom. We know about warmth and wavelength and color and how it affects your feeling in a space and how that increases learning. It's just not applied in classroom redesign.
And that's, as FLEXspace grows, we hope it'll become a one-stop shop for that type of information. We've got links to journals now. So if you've got information or research that we should be posting up there, please, reach out and let us know. That would really be useful to all of our colleagues.
I love that Geneseo, I love that we're going to start getting some real data case study kind of built up, a couple folks trying to move that ahead. I think that's a real step forward. I know that when this got started 2-3 years ago, we had our friends from Construction Fund in on this. Are they in any way still interested or?
Oh.
So it's interesting because I just had a conversation with maybe a couple of weeks ago with Fred Hildebrand, because the Construction Fund is doing a lot of work on the master plans for the campuses, and I reminded Fred that this project happened and gave him a little bit of an update about where this is now. But I said we really need to reconnect the Construction Fund back to the FLEXspace team to see all of what's in there now and how that information can help their planning with the campus master plan. So I'm not sure if that connection has actually been made yet, but that was like an obvious one for me when I was talking to Fred about that.
Yeah, we have to reach back to your friend that you connected me with in New York City. Yeah.
It is really fun to look at the size of the room versus the seating density versus what the learning space rating system says is a good amount of space per participant versus the construction fund, what they say how many people, versus fire code. I mean, there's just so many different aspects of it, and I like personal space. So when you're cramming 50 chairs and that's your fire capacity, what kind of learning environment is that when we're sitting next to each other like this, So that's it's all been very interesting, and it forces you to look at your classrooms in a different way.
How can we tighten this presentation up to be more effective? The one thing that occurred to me as we were going through it is some more pictures.
We do have more pictures. We are adding
put more pictures in.
Our provost, Carol and Rico. They're
Well,
gonna be
I mean,
part
that
of the
alone,
presentation. That's right. So I think that's all we have to do.
So if you see us in the hallway or anything of that nature, put a bug in our ear about.
Do you think more pictures of my 3 rooms would be helpful or not really? We tried. That's not the meat of the presentation. I'm just trying to give an example of some work we've done.
Although one thing I think you could add would be the actual blueprint layout. So picture and
Add the
floor plan
blueprint.
layout.
Yeah,
That might
that's a
be
good
useful.
idea. Or even a
Because then
back
we
of the
can sort of
napkin
give,
sketch.
Mhm.
This is the ancient school,
That's cool.
That'd be one thing to
I think we're probably good here. Don't
We
know if
are-
we
we
need
are
to
good on
eat up
time.
any more bits and bites.
Oh, there she is. Stop.
Oh, stop.
Thank you for
Please
being
stop.
such
Thank you.
fantastic participants. Thanks for coming, Brad. That really.